Coming up on The Returned.
A warm glow entered my room. Suddenly, I was standing at the foot of my bed. I was seeing my body in bed. I could see that my face was very contorted because of the pain. It was just excruciating. I heard my husband laugh. Immediately, I was transported to the family room. He was watching TV with our two girls. I could sense what they were thinking. I could sense everything. I was so much in love for them. I was watching them. I wanted to tell them that I love them. They had no idea that I was in the room.
Hi, and welcome to The Returned. The truth always follows you back. Hi, and welcome to The Returned, a place where we share near-death stories, out-of-body experiences, spiritual awakenings, signs from spirit, and the journeys of healers and light workers from around the world. Today, I am honored to be sitting with Vicki Werner. Vicki's story is one shaped by years of chronic illness, profound exhaustion, and ultimately a moment where her body could no longer carry the weight she had been holding. Vicki, welcome to The Returned.
Oh, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
You're so welcome. Vicki, before we open the doorway to the near-death experience, I'd love to understand more about who you were before it happened. And it doesn't have to be long. It can just be brief. What was life like for you before your illness became such a defining part of your story? And I always ask this, did spirituality, faith, or religion play any role in your life or upbringing?
Oh, fantastic. Yes. I think we all define ourselves by the roles that we have to some degree.
Mhm.
So as that being this
Absolutely.
case, I was in a fairy book marriage. My husband and I had a fantastic marriage. I had five beautiful children, stay-at-home mom. We wanted more of a traditional family dynamic. My husband and I both were the second marriages for one another, and we wanted our children to be raised in a really healthy, traditional home. So I was a stay-at-home mom predominantly. I did work on the side a bit, but a stay-at-home mom and supported my family.
Right. That sounds so nice. So as your health basically declined and the stress of chronic illness accumulated over time, your body basically reached a turning point. I'd like for you to take us gently through that moment when everything basically came crashing down for you, if you're okay with that.
Absolutely. I think that whatever language we want to give it, whether it's God, divine,
Mhm.
universe, creator, we, I think, are always receiving nudges from the other side to some degree. And sometimes those are gentle whispers. Sometimes they're just signs in our environment, a little bit of a download or a cue that something isn't right. And then it eventually tends to be a brick in the head. And maybe our guides are saying, you weren't paying attention to the 11,000 other comments that we did to you, and now we're going to just wake you up before it's too late. I would say that uh, it started symptomatically. I started just not feeling well. My body was worn down, muscle fatigue. I would be classified maybe as fibromyalgia. Um, Chronic bloating, tender body, just wasn't sleeping, tension in my body. I think typically we can all relate to some degree of that, just carrying the weight of our responsibilities as family and career and relationships
Mhm.
and all of those elements that just wear us down. So truthfully, leading up to that, I probably had a few years where my body was sending signals that I needed to redirect. And I was aware that my body was breaking down to some degree, although I wasn't in a position that I could make changes radical enough to make something sustainable. And so my husband and I did actually travel extensively. We went to yoga retreats and meditation retreats and healing retreats, and saw various healers and modalities. And we'll go into this a little bit more down the way. But I think that um, we all look externally for the answer as to why we are the way we are. And I think eventually we get to the point that the healing does come from within, awareness does come from within. And it took a little bit longer for me to get that dialed in. But yeah, that would be
You
the
didn't
case.
get the memo, did you?
No, I missed the memo. I missed the memo that day.
Oh my goodness. So what ended up happening with you?
So I'll start with the backstory of why my body
Sure,
was breaking down. I
absolutely.
Yeah, my husband and I had only been married less than 2 years. When I married him, he was a phenomenal medical doctor. And he was actually an OBGYN, really loved his patients. He himself had a few near-death experiences, three near-death
Wow.
experiences prior to me meeting him. And during those experiences for him, he was very, very intuitive. And so he, using intuition and just wanting to break free of what's a traditional medical model, was coupled with the fact that as an OB, he developed malignant melanoma, and was given 6 weeks to live when he was 29 years old. He had 3 lesions on his brain, 4 on his spine, and it took him on that would be a story for another show. But he uh, ultimately was able to recover his health and completely heal using alternative medicine and parasite cleanses. And rather than that 6 week mark, he ended up losing weight and he completely healed. And he just knew that God was directing him for a higher purpose. And so he left all allopathic medicine and focused on healing his patients. Well, I'll tell you that if anybody knows historically, that doesn't really sit well with the pharmaceutical world nor
Mm,
the medical community. And if somebody has started to look a little bit deep into where the money is in the United States, that would be the pharmaceutical world.
yep,
And
yep.
it we learned very quickly that going against that isn't necessarily an easy path. And so he was set up for medical billing fraud. We knew that was just going to be an open and shut case because HIPAA will show how many times somebody is billed. We thought, oh, this is easy. Of course, he didn't commit medical billing fraud. And so, but it was against the feds. And the federal government in any kind of legal case, statistically, um, they win 98% of those cases, and it's after hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in legal fees. That story is a very long story. Needless to say, I was pregnant with our youngest child. I was 11 weeks pregnant with my fifth child, and I had my 1 year old in my arms when 6 U.S. Marshals entered our office and handcuffed and shackled my husband in front of me, and putting him in prison for a crime he didn't commit. He was in prison for 5 months, and you can imagine how absolutely devastating that was for our family. And we, lost everything, and his business, and um, the stress of that really wore me down. And so once he finally was released, it was on the condition. I mean, it's insane what is capable, what goes on behind this world. And when I tell this story, um, people question it, but I have no reason to not tell the truth. I'm a servant of God, and I tell the truth. But during that time, because he was doing alternative work, they deemed him a threat to society and actually ordered a lobotomy. And thank God that didn't happen. There was a twist of environment that God directed where the day he was supposed to be taken to Missouri for a lobotomy, for some reason they ended up taking the guy that was in my husband's cell. And so um, once
Oh.
once he was able to do a plea bargain, and it was very corrupt, of course, because they set his trial to be on my due date so that I couldn't be there with him. And but he was my OB, so I needed my husband to come home. And um, we ended up doing a plea deal, which I think most people end up doing because you're fighting something. It's a David and Goliath moment. And so, you know, most doctors can confirm that in most states, if you hurt or actually cause harm or death to a patient, you would be on probation approximately maybe 3 years, or you could just move to another state and you could start fresh. You'd be under the medical umbrella. However, he was ordered to never practice medicine anywhere in the country for the rest of his life, and he never caused harm. And there was no harm. He never lost a patient. There was never any patient who ever reported him. They loved him very much. But he pleaded to no longer practice medicine, so he relinquished his medical license, and we had a fine of $275,000, and he was on probation. But I had my husband home, and we were able to deliver our child together in a beautiful way, and we just worked on healing. But the stress of that just was very grueling, and I lived in chronic fear. It still now has been 20 years, and I still panic when the doorbell rings because of that, and I panic when mail comes, and I still have these residual responses because our brains are meant to keep us alive, so it'll keep those things really much on the high alert. But fast forward, it was uh, our youngest was 7, and over the years of just constantly trying to create a boundary around my husband and trying to figure out, I mean, everything he was in his career was in the medical model, so that was just starting over. But eventually, just the stress of that just wore my stomach down and wore my body down. So in 2012, so that event when my husband was taken it was in September of 2004. In July, like I told you, we were spending a lot of time trying to find healing opportunities, and we ended up going down to Peru in 2012. In July, we did a healing journey in ayahuasca and just trying to do that deep healing. That didn't go well for me. I got very, very sick and probably should have been hospitalized, but I wasn't. And I just didn't really fully recover, just returned home to just chronic nausea, like really, really intense nausea, food reactions and such. And in November of that year, I was assisting my sister with the birth of her baby. And my husband and I were there assisting her. She was doing a home birth, and I was doing the pressure points and as a doula and massage for my very special sister. And during one of those contractions, I was doing counter pressure, and suddenly I momentarily life force left my body and I dropped to the floor. And that was the first time that I was thinking, I'm in trouble here. Something isn't right. My sister looked at me during that contraction and she said, Vicki, I need you. I need you. And by the grace of God, I was able to readmit myself to being present with her. She ended up having a beautiful, healthy baby. And, but it was 3 weeks later. At this point, my body was convulsing quite a bit and I was having severe seizures. My average day leading up into that was severe shaking. My nervous system just started to shut down. And I just chronic nausea, and by shaking, I mean really violently shaking. My body would shake quite a bit. I was just so weak and fatigued to the point I couldn't even talk anymore. And mid-December, I told my husband, who he really wasn't into the medical model anymore. He just knew it from the inside, and he was treating everything that he could to support me. But one night I said, you need to take me to the emergency room. I'm genuinely afraid I'm going to die. And he agreed. He didn't feel like I was going to get the support that I needed, but of course he wanted to make sure that, my needs were met. And I was very clear that I was on a breaking point. So we went to the emergency room. Again, I was shaking violently. And I don't know if they thought that I was there for a fix, if they thought I was some kind of addict or attention seeking. But overall, out of everyone through the admitting and the nurses and the medical staff who came in, who interacted with me, there was only one of them that was actually kind and present. And it was a gentleman that just clearly had some level of compassion, but that wasn't the case. And so they ran extensive tests. I was there for a number of hours. They came in and very callously said, "It's gastritis, go home." And I was really shocked because they didn't give me anything for pain or for nausea. And they sent me
Mm.
on my way, which I was very disappointed. We arrived back home, uh, went back into bed. He had to help assist me even in moving back. I couldn't even
Wow.
walk by myself, but put me into bed. I slept really restlessly that night and into the next day. And I was alone in bed. It was 6:52 p.m. is when I ended up having this experience in December of that year. But I was wide awake, and I also was freezing cold for some reason.
Mm.
I just my hormones were off. Everything was off because I was wearing flannel pajamas. I had a heating pad touching my skin. It would like blister my skin, but I needed the heat. And I had 3 comforters and socks, and I still was freezing. So everything was really off. And there was a warm glow that entered my room. It was just a really warm, soft glow. And I was watching this glow in my room. And then suddenly I was standing at the foot of my bed, and I was seeing my body in bed. And I could see that my face was very contorted because of the pain. And when I say the
Mm.
pain, on a scale of 0 to 10 that we use as a model, I could honestly say mine was a 27. It was just excruciating pain. And so my hair was just disheveled with restlessness and the shaking, and the comforter pulled up around my neck. And I immediately had such compassion for the body that was laying there. And I looked over at the clock as this mom who just always wonders when my children are going to need me. I looked at the clock and it said 6:52 p.m. And at that moment, I heard my husband laugh down the hall. He was watching TV in the family room, and immediately I was transported to the living room, in the family room where he was watching TV with our 2 girls. And I immediately could sense what they were thinking. I could sense everything. I was so much in love for them. And simultaneously, I was really annoyed because he was watching The Simpsons, and our 7 and 9-year-old I thought was too advanced. It was too advanced for our children to watch. So the annoyance, when you leave your body, you're still annoyed about the same things. So I was watching them. I wanted to tell them that I love them, and that I knew they had no idea that I was in the room. And for some reason, after about a moment, we were I was transported to where I see them. And this may cause some confusion for people, but I think everyone has a different journey based upon what their guides want them to know, or
Okay.
what their soul is seeking to have a deeper understanding. So for me, I was transported to this long pathway, and at the top of the pathway was this large boulder. My husband was sitting on the boulder. He had our youngest sitting in his lap, and our children were circled around him. And I was very confused, and I locked eyes with my husband first, and I could see tears streaming down his face. And he said, "It's okay. I'll be okay." And I was very confused, thinking, okay with what? I'm not okay. What's happening? I was aware that I was no longer in pain. I was aware that we were in a very different environment, but I was very confused. So I
Mhm.
turned to my children, my oldest daughter, and she was crying, and she said, "It's okay, mommy, I'll be okay." And each one of them said that until I got to my youngest daughter, and she just, her eyes were just wide saucers, and buried her head in her father's lap, into his chest. And as that was happening, I was being pulled away from my family, and by a force that I couldn't identify, but I had no control over it. In front of me, being pulled away from them, on the path, were my parents and my siblings. And then behind them were extended family and friends, and behind them were like everybody that I knew were all on this path. And in front of me, I could see this large building. But as I was moving along, I I noticed my mom also saying that she loved me and that she would also be okay. And so everyone that I interacted with, some key things were that nobody asked me to stay. Nobody told me that I would be missed. They all just said that I love you and we'll be okay. And uh, that was very confusing for me. But again, I was still being drawn into this, towards this building. And the way I can describe this building was very similar to what we would associate the archetype of a haunted mansion. So it was black and had sharp spires on the roof. There were black ravens on the roof, that very dilapidated. The shutters were hanging, and the yard, the fence was broken, and all of the grass was dead. The tree was dead, bushes, very, very dilapidated,
Mhm.
and zero life. And I will tell you, I avoid those type of scenes by all means. One, my nervous system is just very delicate anyway, but you will never find me in a haunted house. But for some reason, it didn't frighten me. I just kept moving forward. But once I went through the entrance of the gate, uh, instantaneously everything transformed. The sharp spires on the roof domed into a beautiful dome. The building went from this sharp black to a beautiful golden white. The ravens became white doves. The tree came alive. Every blade of grass came alive, and I could see and feel love emanating from the blades of grass. There was music, a very soft, soft, subtle sound of harmony, and everything became very, very beautiful, vibrant, and alive. And
Hmm.
as I entered and again, it was all without me doing any walking. I'm very keenly aware that I moved without walking, but I entered through the doorway, and I was met by three beings of light. And these three beings were all very beautiful. They were more androgynous. I couldn't differentiate one over the other. One of them was the primary spokesperson, and they started to communicate to me, saying um, that uh, that my body, that I had left my body due to severe trauma. That the pathway was my soul's representation of my journey home. That my family and loved ones did not say that they would miss me because their consciousness was not prepared for me to cross over. But I was being welcomed home. And as I entered that space, three more beings came into the room, and two of them came in front, and one of them was carrying behind them a crystal bowl of water with a soft crystal sponge and crystal water. And then as they entered, um, I looked down, and my entire form. Oh, they also told me that there are many layers to the physical incarnation, and this layer was this was the one that was coming home. We have our astral and physical and causal and emotional and mental bodies,
Mhm.
all of these layers of bodies for anyone who has looked into that. Uh, but they said this layer of body was very, very severely damaged. And at that moment, it dropped from my body. It dropped, and I could see my entire body on the floor without any structure or form, just like a tired outfit that you had on the day before, sitting on the floor. And it was very unusual to see my body on the floor. but I look down and I look like an illuminated being just like them as well. So I no longer looked myself. And the two people the two beings who came in, they picked up the discarded shell of my body while the third one started bathing it with the crystal water and said that they were working on healing that. They proceeded to move me towards this area where there were three very large statues, and I would guesstimate they were between 14 and 16 feet tall, adorned with beautiful gems and gold. And behind them, behind that layer of those statues, was a darkened pathway, a darkened hallway, if you will. And they told me that if I went past that, if I entered that area, that I would not be able to return home, and that that was the gate of no return. And we approached these three statues, and the first one was very illuminated. The other two were a little bit more shadowed. And they said that at that moment that I was being given three gifts, and the first gift was the gift of sight. And honestly, I can't tell you if those three gifts were represented in those statues or what. That was just what was conveyed to me when they said the gift of sight. And immediately there were about 150 videos playing simultaneously around me. And how I differ from a typical near-death experience where people have maybe a life review.
Mhm.
I wasn't given a life review. I was shown how all of my loved ones would live without me if I chose to cross over. So I was seeing videos of my daughters as they were growing up. I saw my daughter's wedding. I saw my family trying to reach out to my husband. I saw that he went into a very depressed state. And then I saw my youngest daughter, who again was 7 at the time, and I saw her for briefly, I don't know the time frame, but briefly become mute because of the trauma of losing me. And I was watching that video, and they said that I was an intricate part of her life purpose and that she would not live her life purpose if I chose to cross over. And so again, as this mom, I I turned to them and I said, I have to go back. Sophie needs me. And I was immediately back into my bed and immediately back in excruciating pain. And I saw that 8 minutes had passed. For me, it felt I would guess maybe 3.5 hours. It was what it felt like, but it was 8 minutes. And I just laid there. The glow dissipated from my room. And I just remember touching my body, and I just kept saying, God, please let me live. Please, please just let me live. I need to live. And I knew my husband was going to be bringing our girls in for prayer shortly. And so, again, I wasn't in a position that I could talk. I was still really, really weak. But a little bit later, he brought the girls in, and my youngest was up. She was standing up towards the top of my head. And then my 9-year-old and my husband were, lining the side of the bed. And my husband did the very traditional prayer, um, asking God to heal me and protect our family and to remind me that I'm loved, and, very as any husband would do.
Mhm.
And he finished the prayer, and my sweet little girl, she leaned her head in and she whispered in my ear, "I need you, Mommy." And it still chokes me up because I wanted to reply and say, I know, and I'm going to be here, and I promise you I'm going to be here. I didn't have the capacity to do that. So all I could do is let the tears fill up my ears, and just continue to pray. Um, my days went for, on average, I would start violently shaking probably around 10 a.m., and I would shake about 8 to 10 hours every single day, to the point my children would lay on my legs to keep me from
Oh.
falling off the bed. I developed severe food reactions where I was violently reactive to, well, we tested for 500 foods, and I was violently reacted to 493 of them. So
Oh.
my food was, my entire gut was pulverized. My nervous system was very raw, severe, severe trauma. And a very long journey, a very, very long
Right.
journey. But I was bedbound for about another 8 months, but slowly regained some vitality, and now as far as I do have some food sensitivity, really still severe with gluten, but as a general rule, I can eat like a normal person, and I I feel like I've come a long way, but it's again been a very long journey.
I'll say, and wow, that is very unique, your story, isn't it?
Yeah,
So I just want to start off by asking you, do you think that them cleaning your body or your, s- I don't even know what to call it, like
yeah.
your
My etheric body.
remains, your
Yeah,
suit, your, do you think that that had played a part in your healing?
I do. I feel like
Hmm.
that was definitely. Uh, I obviously didn't have an instantaneous healing, but I also think that was purposeful because there were certainly lessons I was supposed to learn through that, and it helped me be who I am today, and to be able to write my book, and to be able to assist others. And I think if I would have had that instantaneous healing, full disclosure, I would have went back to the same life, and I would have been the same person doing the same things. And
Right.
and sometimes God has
Yeah.
to give you a wake up call bigger than that. So that I think that was why, but it certainly leveled the playing field so that I could start the healing journey.
That reminds me of mine as well. I just had, when I had my NDE, I just out of nowhere had something happen that never happened again. And
Yeah,
I sometimes believe that these are just like, okay, it's time to, it kind of closes one door, opens up another door, and you're like, what the heck just happened to me?
yeah,
Like,
exactly.
but I do know and empathize with you because it didn't come to me right away. I was actually traumatized um, after what I had gone through. Did you feel that way?
I Yeah, I very, very cautious. I felt like my kitchen was a war zone, not knowing what I could eat.
Mm.
I could
Hmm.
no longer. I remember that, like shortly after that, the movie 12 Years a Slave came out, and I really wanted to see that movie, but I
Yeah.
sat there and I remember about 10 or 15 minutes in, my body started to shake violently, and I had no control over that. It was just my nervous system. It would be sending these signals of like alert, abort, abort, abort mission because your body's shutting down. So my nervous system is a very delicate system, and I don't come from a space of victim from that. It's not from a space of look at me or I'm different than anybody
Hmm.
else. I just have my constitution just happens to be one where my nervous system is a very delicate one. And maybe was it nature versus nurture? I don't know, but that's where I am. So I am very aware not to put myself in stressful environments intentionally. I won't watch things that disrupt my nervous system. I don't know why people do anyway, intentionally. Life is stressful enough anyway. But I listen to my body a lot more than I ever did.
Hmm.
And so when I'm seeing, I don't want red flags. I want like little gentle yellow alert. Yes. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense to me. I was thinking back in the beginning of your story and the pattern or the pathway that you were on, um, where all the families, the parents, the siblings, everybody was there on your path. And you did say, you're like, oh, well, that was to show me, everybody would be okay if I wasn't here. And their consciousness didn't have the fact that you wouldn't be, right?
Yeah.
When you were in it, though, what did you think of them? Like, what was your essence saying to you?
Well,
Like, you must have been confused.
I was very confused. I was
Mhm.
very, very confused. And ultimately, when I reflect back on that, I think that what was being conveyed to me as this stay-at-home mom, where where you feel like your family goes to work and to school and they go out for the day. Uh, I th- I would say a lot of stay-at-home moms probably feel this, that their value in the outer world uh, doesn't, you wonder, am I even contributing to anything, and to the whole and to the collective energy? You feel like
Right.
you don't realize the impact that you have. And I think that was what was trying to be conveyed to me, is the impact of who would be affected by my loss. And I think, um, yeah, and we can go into this later after losing my son, of just recognizing that we don't really understand how much our impact of just being alive affects other people. And when we are no
Yeah.
longer here, how many people are just impacted by that. And I think we question our value. I think I was raised in an environment where my value, and I teach this a lot, and I really want to impose this, that um, it's common to think that your value is on the deeds that you do. And so you have to work to earn your keep, or work to earn a seat at the table, either
Mhm.
socially or in relationships. And maybe not everybody's like that, and certainly I don't think everybody is, but I was. I was raised that in a family where you worked to earn your keep.
Mhm.
And I remember being very sick, and my grandma coming around the corner and bopping me on the head and telling me to get up and work it off. And I was like, I'm vomiting my toenails, like I'm really, really sick. So, but it was just instilled in me that
Mhm.
value was on the work that I did, rather than I have value because I have life. I have value because I exist. And
That's right.
that's something I want to impart to everyone, that you have value because you have life. You are life. And our value is not, our value we put around our financial our financial world, or our level of what we perceive as success, or maybe our looks, our intellect, and we corner those together, but that's not the case. We have value because God gave us life.
That's right. Mhm. I agree with you. I just wanted to touch briefly before you go on, the 3 beings of light. Actually, there was a total of 6 beings that you've seen. May
Correct.
I ask you, what did the beings look like?
Yeah, it was really interesting because they illuminated so much light that I couldn't
Mhm.
really make out specific features. They had
Okay.
they had there I didn't notice any of them having hair, but they had beautiful faces, really beautiful soft features. They had physical form, arms and legs, and torso, of course, and a head, but um, they were all just very, very illuminated. It was just this glowing light coming off of all of them, and it was it was very striking to me, because I couldn't
Mhm.
say whether one was male or female, and I don't know if I
Right.
saw them all together whether I could differentiate which one did what, because they looked very, very similar to me, very similar, all very beautiful, um, but nothing that really stood out, such as they had large ears, or any of that kind of thing. And when they communicated, it was all telepathically. I didn't hear any
Mhm.
voices.
Yeah, that's what I figured. And may just I'm just gonna ask, Vicky, where were you? Where do you think you were? If you were to think like where was it that you were?
Yeah, if I were going to describe the best way that I could, I feel like I was most likely in the in between, and where I wouldn't say I was necessarily in the heavenly realm. I maybe, but I feel like
Mhm.
here we are in this 3D world, what we know as the third
Mhm.
dimension on Earth. It's often talked about Bardo, or the fourth
Yeah.
dimension. Um, I feel like if anywhere, it would probably be that. It was a fascinating place. It was an interesting place. But I wouldn't say that I was in heaven per se, which we would maybe equate as the fifth dimension. So if I put it anywhere in the category, probably the fourth dimension and in the space of the in between.
Okay. And one more about that is the significance between when you saw the rickety, haunted looking house, and then when you walked through the gate, it immediately changed to something absolutely gorgeous. Have you ever thought, why? Did you ever think, why did that darkness show?
I feel like what was happening with that is as I was maybe maybe transforming from these different dimensions, that was the breaking point between the third dimension, because everything was in the earth realm. What I could see looked very earth like, and as I entered that, it leaped into the next dimension. And
Ah,
I think as above, so below, that all things
hmm,
exist in the heavenly realms on
okay.
and multiple, different parallel worlds or different dimensions. So I think that was the entrance into. I feel like that entering the gate was the entrance into the fourth dimension, and if I were to pass beyond those statues on into that hallway, it would have been entering into the fifth dimension or the heavenly realms.
And that statue, actually, you only got the first gift, correct? That was the gift of sight, and
Yeah,
that was all the TVs.
yeah, yeah.
Wow, that must have been something.
Yeah, however, I got back in my bed and for 8 months, I had a lot of time to contemplate. So,
Yeah.
uh, I wondered if what that meant. Was this a singular experience of the gift of sight? But I've been really, really blessed, and I have a visual, scene that is extraordinary at this point. So I think I was developing the gift of psychic sight, and that has
Yeah.
been very, very helpful as I move into. I'm doing like little caveats of where we're going on this as we move into uh, the rest of the story.
Okay. Well, let's do that.
Yeah, let's
Thank
do
you.
that. Yeah, so on this healing journey, I was raising my family, and as a side note, um, I was starting school again, wanting to do a lot of, I went into a lot of healing work and learned an enormous amount of modalities, trying to really release the trauma. And I was studying school of going into uh, doing EFT as a clinical EFT practitioner, because I wanted to really get the big guns. I thought I know that all healing has to come from a perception shift and for the brain and emotional, trauma is stored in the body. And so I really wanted to do my heavy lifting and address all of the trauma that I had experienced. So I was in school. My husband and uh, I said we had really did have a fairy tale marriage. We every year we renewed our wedding vows in 36 countries. And every year for our anniversary, we traveled to a different location to celebrate our anniversary. We were down in the Florida Keys, and our anniversary was February 28th of 24. Had a lovely time. My husband had his own journey of his own body breaking down as well. And we almost lost him in 2017 due to an infection, and he became a type 1 diabetic. And so his health was a little bit precarious, but we had a lovely time on the beach on our anniversary, and he promised me many more years. And um, we got home from that trip, and sadly, 11 days after our anniversary, my husband collapsed in front of me and passed. And I watched him leave his body, and obviously that was incredibly shocking. Um, then So I have four daughters and a son, and my son was really struggling after the passing of my husband, and he wanted to just do his own inner work, and he ended up doing a psychedelic mushroom journey in July of that year, and sadly, that didn't go well. And during that experience, my son sadly took his own life, and so I found my son, and um, immediately lost everything that I held dear. And due to the circumstances of that, my home that was just this lovely home immediately became a crime scene uh, due to a self-inflicted wound. And my daughters and I moved into a hotel for 3 months. Unfortunately, we had a trust that was in place. We thought everything was good. He has five children from his previous marriage who I loved and adored as my own. I will tell you, death brings out very ugly things in people. And my husband's oldest son, who never lived in our life, um, came at me pretty hard. And I've been in a horrific, horrific probate battle for now almost 2 years. So, I had to walk away from the home that my father and I built, and I raised my family, walk away from our business, um, lost pretty much I was a matriarch with the his, hers, and ours of our children and their spouses and grandchildren. I went from being a matriarch to 25 people, um, to there was a point where it was down to two, the two daughters that my husband and I had together. My other daughters really struggled and pulled back after my son's passing, and thankfully, I have an incredible mother and an incredible group of my siblings that sustained me through a unspeakable, horrific life experience.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry to hear this.
Yeah, yeah. It's been a pretty
Un
grueling 2 years.
Vicky, so sorry.
Thank
I
you.
mean, what can anybody say, right? It's so sad.
Yeah,
Um, Unthinkable.
yeah.
I just
I will say,
How are you now? Are you
yeah.
okay?
Interestingly, um, yeah. I mean, okay is a relative term, of course.
Uh-huh.
Um, I've been blessed with. I was fortunate enough to move in the home right next door to my mom and my siblings. And I have an uncle. My favorite uncle lives across the street. I have family really close. That's really lovely, and it's been a phenomenal experience. And um, I, I- I've been it's really interesting. I thought I would just eternally be with my husband. We loved each other very much, but I realized I was dying with him, and it's been a challenging experience. But on a very challenging night after some more horrible probate with um, the legal system. If I could say anything, please get everything in order. Like we've all heard, you don't want to go through probate. I want to tell you, you really don't. It's not a system that protects the surviving spouse, and it's not the system that protects the surviving family. And everything that we had, we went through bankruptcy, and my husband lost everything when he was in prison. So everything we created together. His adult children never lived in our home. They never worked a single day in our business. They never had anything to do with it. And suddenly, um, the life insurance policy that he had for me, I had to relinquish to them. I they threatened to make me homeless. Thank God my name was on the title of the home, but it's already cost me over $300,000. And people that they capitalized on the fact that my son had passed and that I was living in a hotel and painting a picture. And so I sold we sold our travel trailer and my husband's Jeep to pay for his medical bills and his funeral expenses. And they came after me hard and said that I was incompetent because the surviving spouse is, of course, going to be the executor unless they're deemed incompetent. So, at a time when I was the most vulnerable, they came at me through the jugular, and um, it's unforgivable at this point. And I, the rejection and the cruelty. My husband's family never once checked on us, never once asked if we were doing okay. His siblings. In fact, my husband's father passed about 4 months ago, and I was not even mentioned in the obituary or included in anything. And it's just those things are quite hurtful when you're already compounded grief anyway. And so, for anybody who's listening to this, we had a trust in place, but the last page wasn't signed. The attorney didn't have my husband sign the last page, so it was a clerical error that I paid a very, very heavy price. And if you know somebody who has lost anyone, and if my children were 19 and 20 when their father passed, and I just had to plead with everybody, like my mom and my siblings, reach out to my children. Like I'm an adult, and it's horrible. And of course, everybody wants to look out for me, and I'm very, very grateful for that. But look out for the children too. Check on the children too, because they don't live in a world where they have a social support. Like my daughter, our daughter, she came home she was in university. Her birthday was 2 days before her father passed, so she came home. We had her birthday, and then she went back up to school, and he passed on the Monday morning, and um, she had just left hours before, and she gets the phone call that her dad had just died. And so she walks in with her roommate who was scrolling on Instagram, and she said, "My dad just died." And her roommate was like, "Oh, sorry," and then just went right back to her phone, like had zero
Oh my God.
consciousness to even say, "Wow, how can I be there for you?" And the social world for young adults and children, there is not a network out there that they know how to, they have nothing in their own world to even relate to. Very seldom is it going to be
Mhm.
somebody who knows what that feels like or how that is. So I plead, reach out to the children. They 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 need the support, and there's very little out there for them.
That
But
just breaks my heart.
yeah.
And you are right. Families get ugly,
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
so unfair. You know, I I don't want to say this that sounds mean or anything. Is there a lesson in it for you at all? Like kind of like when we have an NDE, right? There's usually a reason, right? We're going to be
Sure.
redirected this way, redirected that way, a lesson. Or do you feel that there's anything like that in these two experiences that you went through? Or did you get anything out of any of them?
Sure, sure. And I think as time passes, I mean, I'm a couple weeks out to the 2-year anniversary of my husband's passing, which is still so surreal, of course.
Yeah.
Like how did 2 years happen?
It's
I,
still raw.
it's so raw. In fact, I used to say I missed him when I went to the mailbox. Like I
I'm
would miss him when
sorry.
I would leave the home for 2 minutes. And so it was of course just a brutal experience. So far, how I could articulate, and maybe this will change over time. But, when I talked about value system and our self value, uh, when you get to be in a position where evil, cruel people try to rob you of your life, when my security was in my husband, he was the breadwinner, he was the one who, so not only did that security leave, but also the threat of any future security is now gone too, and the life insurance policy. And, I say this really, as gently as I can, because I know people hear this and could say, oh, she's just making it up, or she's just like wants attention. It's none of that. I'm just trying to educate people. Like, this is my story. This is, you couldn't be in a more vulnerable experience. But um,
No.
what I have learned is I believe, I believe Earth is a school. And I feel like we come down to experience specific experiences for some level of development and growth, learning. And um, I, as a side note, I'm also a past life regression therapist, and so I'm very, very aware of the path of the soul journey and the lifetimes and what we learn from these experiences. And it always will come after having hundreds and hundreds of clients that people often will say, what is my purpose? What is my purpose? And it would be easy for me to cut to the chase by saying your purpose is love. Now, how that plays out is going to be different for each of us, but your purpose is to deepen your love. So what I've learned so far is I've always had a great deal of compassion and empathy. I think that's been one of my strong suits, um, I, s- but now I have a lot more of that for myself. And it's common for people to say, I can't imagine, I can't imagine. And I'll respond, me either. I can't imagine. And it's my life. I can't imagine what it would be like to go through that. And I'm walking the walk and walking my path. And it's so much for my brain to even comprehend. And there's way more details uh, of that has gone on through all of this. So it's it's not an understatement to say it's been brutal. It's been excruciating,
Yeah.
brutal.
Mhm.
Um, Countless people have said, have told me that I'm strong, like, you're so strong, you're so strong. And I would encourage people, don't say that to someone who's suffering, because
Mhm.
one, they may present strong right this moment, but 10 minutes ago, they may have been on the shower floor sobbing their eyes out.
Mhm.
And 20
Yep.
minutes from now, they may drive past and smell a scent of their mother, or they see a picture, or they hear a song, and all of a sudden they're at ground zero again. Our brains are
Yep.
time
I
travelers.
I'm
So
going through that as we speak right now, and people have actually said the same thing you're speaking of. Oh, you're so strong. You're so strong. No, well, you don't see me every
yeah,
minute of every day. It looks like I am, and I can pull it together, but
yeah.
then you don't know what happens after, you know?
And what does strong mean? Like, that's a badge of
Exactly.
honor? Nobody wants,
Mm,
at the end of my life,
yeah.
I don't want the trophy saying that I was strong. I don't want that trophy. I don't want the identity of I suffered the most. The
I hear
language
you.
I would encourage people to say is, you're safe and you're going to be okay. You're safe and you're going to
Yeah.
be okay, because nothing feels safe anymore. Nothing's familiar anymore. Our world is different. And so what I'm trying to convey is, I'm telling you that I love you, I hear you, and it your brain needs a sense of safety. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Safety
That's right.
first. We will borrow, still, beg, do whatever we can to have safety. And so saying you're safe when the rug is pulled out from underneath you and nothing's familiar, and you're waiting for that other shoe to drop because you've seen the worst case scenario. I've seen the worst case scenario. So when somebody says I'm strong, I'm like, am I? Or am I just
Mhm.
literally surviving? Because survival
Yeah.
looks the same. It looks the same.
Mhm. Yeah.
And ultimately, through the sessions of my own near death experience, all those videos, it actually showed eventually my family was okay. It doesn't mean they were happy, but again, it's a very fluid word. Oh, strong, okay. I mean, are we going to categorize one as better than another? But just giving permission to be seen and to heard, and allow that nervous system to be acknowledged, and knowing that there will be a time that we'll move forward. It won't be easy. It never leaves us, but we're okay. We're going to be okay. God designed it. And I'm so sorry about the loss of your mother, but you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay.
Yeah, it was really tough. Just like anybody, I always look and think, oh, well, why should I be sad? Look at that person. I'm hearing this story right now and I'm thinking, how dare I be sad? That is really rough what you've
Yeah.
gone through.
Yeah.
And to sit across from you here while you hold it together is amazing to me.
Mm, thank you. Well,
Yeah.
you know,
I mean, I don't know. What else do we have to do, though? We have really no other choice,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah. I, by God's grace, I stayed in my body, and I there grew a fire in my belly, um, to not die with my husband and son. And truthfully, I wanted to. I wanted to, and I will say I've always been a prayerful person. I've always been a very prayerful person. I've been a very spiritual person my entire life. I've, especially like I said, I've been a near death, past life
Yeah.
regression therapist. So the spirit realm is very familiar to me anyway. Those would be the books that I would always be drawn to anyway. Um, but it's just it's deeper. It's deeper for me now, and I had a really beautiful experience. A few months, nearly 4 months ago. Uh, I was just at ground zero, and there's so many things I would love to share regarding the spiritual messages about preparing
Sure.
for this.
Anything you would like. Whatever you
One,
feel good about sharing.
yeah. So one thing that was very interesting, as I told you, I was doing my school. I was going to school and becoming a certified EFT practitioner. I was working one on one with another practitioner, and in that, due to the ability of sight that I have as well to enhance that, in January of 24, uh, I wanted to have a session with her, and the focal point of that session was I wanted to address the big guns of like, we've done enough work for about 6 months. And so, hey, let's address the time when my husband was kidnapped. And that was the language my brain recognized. He was kidnapped and handcuffed and shackled in front of me as I was pregnant with a 1 year old in my arms and the trauma of that. So we wanted to address that session. And so the whole focal point of that session, and it was really interesting because during the session, I time traveled. I went right to that moment. I saw that version of me, scared, shocked, what's happening, no control, and watching my one of my husband's best friends in middle school was one of the agents who had arrested him, and just so many complexities of that. And in the session, I just kind of lifted out of my body and I could see myself in this, like meeting with this woman, and I could see different versions of me. And this woman comes forward, and I really think she was my primary guide. And she was talking to me, and I said, "Why did this happen?" And she said, um, "You've done enough work that I can tell you this much information. That not only did you sign up for this experience, you requested it. And not only did you request it, God granted you the opportunity to have this experience. And it's actually because God doesn't set us up for failure."
No.
And she also said there's a web of intricate details that are necessary to go into place to ensure certain challenges take place for that individual. And so I'm taking all of this information in and I'm like, oh my God, it's like a whole shift of perception. And then she stops me just as we're wrapping up the session and she says, "I need to tell you one thing before you go." And so I'm like, okay. And she said, "In either March or April, you're going to experience a significant loss, but you will be okay." I leave the session. I go upstairs. I leave my office. I go upstairs to my husband. And I said, not only did we sign up for that, but we requested it. And I'm telling my husband, I'm going to experience a significant loss in either March or April, thinking maybe it was his dad because his dad was 96 and, not even coming close. And it was interesting. I saw this balloon arch and she said I was six yards to the finish line. Well, my husband died exactly 6 weeks to the day.
Oh
And
my
I
gosh.
just kept hearing this, but you're going to be okay. Well, after a brutal probate, I wasn't feeling so okay. I just was
Yeah.
not. And for a solid year and a half, I was like, God, I'm no longer okay. Like taking me to the point of almost breaking me, but not was another language that was another statement was said.
Mhm.
And I'm like, yeah, I'm there. I'm beyond that. And I was literally in early October, having a come to Jesus moment with my husband. And I was like, and God, whoever was in the spirit realm to listen, like, fix this or get me off the planet. And remarkably, a day and a half later, I received a random message on Facebook Messenger from a guy that I had a crush on as a sophomore in high school, 39 years earlier. And he said, "Hi, do you remember me?" And I'm just like, yeah, of course I do. Um, and he said, "I've thought about you. A year ago, I saw one of your posts about your husband and son, and I just wanted to reach out and say I'm so sorry." And it's so interesting. Now I'm dating, um, and it's so interesting because from his side, he woke up that morning. I was not on his radar under any circumstances. We hadn't talked in 39 years. And yet that morning, he had a nudge that was bigger than him saying, no matter what, reach out to her today, which he did. Um, it was on a Saturday where he was off from work, and a little bit of texting for a few minutes. And shortly later, we took it at the phone and talked for 7 hours. And I finished that phone call, and I walked out and I saw my family that lives in this cul-de-sac with me. And my sister's like, "What's happening? You're smiling. You're smiling. What's happening?"
Oh.
So it was just amazing because literally, physically, by the next day, my cheeks, I was like Barbie in the movie, so Toy Story, because my cheeks literally were aching from smiling for the first time in 20 months.
Aw. I'm
So
so happy to hear that.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
So there,
So,
you know,
so somebody put him in that path.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. And I think it was
They heard you.
I think it was my husband saying,
Absolutely.
take her from here. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh.
yeah,
I hope I'm not insensitive by asking this. Have you had signs from your husband?
yeah, yeah. I've had
Yeah.
some real beautiful ones.
Oh.
One of my favorite signs was, um, and I have from my son as well. That has been really lovely. Um, so we have a very good friend that flew in for Scott's funeral, and he was very close to both of us. And I, eh, so the day of it, so my husband, we had his celebration of life, and his funeral was the day after his birthday. He died in March, and his birthday was also in March. And so our friend flew in um, on Scott's birthday, and I drove to the airport to pick him up at the airport. And I just noticed, for some reason, I was just paying attention to the screen on my car, and the song, John Denver song, "Leaving on a Jet Plane,"
Mm.
was playing. And I remember looking at it and seeing the title, Leaving on a Jet Plane." Well, I parked the car. The song had ended as I was pulling into the parking lot. And then um, I went in to pick up my friend. He was just arriving. We got his luggage and got back into the car nearly 40 minutes later, maybe 35 minutes later. And I turn on the car and the song comes on again, but it says, "Babe, I hate to go." And he always called me babe. We were babe for each other's, phone. Our names on the phone it just said babe. And obviously, that's one of the sentences in the song, but the exact same song, and it was "Babe, I Hate to Go." So obviously, that was a really beautiful message. And I've also this friend that I'm mentioning. He's a really brilliant, brilliant psychic medium and very, very high level, and has given me some really great experiences. But I would say I get most of, and another one was um, the day the day my son passed. I was listing my home for sale because I just couldn't be there anymore. And so my family was coming and we were going to do a little bit of touch up paint. Well, I was on the floor in the bathroom and I was scrubbing, and our wedding song was a very, very unusual. It was a very unique song that I've never once heard it on the radio. I've never heard it in 23 years on the radio, but I was scrubbing my bathroom, and all of a sudden that song came on that was our wedding song, and I just stopped and I started sobbing, and I was like, oh my gosh, my husband's here, obviously acknowledging that we're selling the house. And then my mom and my sister walked in a couple of minutes later, and I'm still sobbing because the song's still playing, and I was like, Mom, I can't take anymore, I can't take anymore. um and I went and just laid my head on her lap and in the couch, and right after that, I found my son. So I think that was my husband saying, I'm here. I'm here.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. You have gone through the ringer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I do like to hear that you found happiness, though, some
Yeah.
sort of happiness,
Yeah.
at least that, right? And I believe that it will only go up from here for you.
Thank you.
I just have a feeling.
Thank you.
A lot of people fear death. And when that happened to you, I'm just going back a bit, when you died, um, were you afraid? Do you remember being afraid or even knowing?
I was aware what was happening after a little, as I was entered that building, leaving my family, I was a little bit confused, but I obviously knew I had left my body. And I was very
Mhm.
familiar about that experience because in my regressions, I always take my clients through the death experience. And that there's a number of reasons for that. Primarily, because fear is a very common thing about death. It feels unfamiliar. So
Mhm.
it removes that sense of fear. I never feared death though. Even as a child, I never feared it. I was unusual,
Wow.
I guess, in that way. It actually intrigued me. I was very intrigued by it. As far as so that wasn't an issue for me per se, but I also take them through I take them through the death experience because it's the back door into the spirit realm, and
Yeah.
where we can access that. So
I was just wondering, so if you had any fear and especially when you were looking at your body.
yeah, I didn't. There
Mhm.
was no. I was inquisitive, and there was confusion. There was absolutely confusion, like what's happening type thing. But
Mhm.
it reported back to me through various sessions I've seen that there are beings, we're not going to be out there flailing. There's going to be a loved
Yeah.
one or a guide or whatever your representation. I know many people will see Jesus. It's a very common thing. Um, whatever is going to be the most supportive for you. And I know I've had a lot of sessions in the spirit realm and a lot of work that I've done since their passing, I've learned a lot more about the spirit realm and the roles that various individuals have. And as horrific as it is, um, I'm very grateful that
Oh.
if I had to lose my husband and son, I'm grateful that I lost my husband first so that he would be there for my son. It just,
Mm.
from a mom's perspective, you're just like,
Mhm.
it's psychologically, it's a comfort. It's a comfort. And I
Mhm.
will tell you one other little um, spiritual message that I had after my husband passed, and I happened to be at church with my niece and her grandmother on her mom's side, and I it was at a church event for my nephew, and I was in the back and saw, like, just gently tears were streaming because I just knew my husband would have been there. and it was just very sad. And we finished the session, and my niece's grandmother had lost her husband too, and so she's like, "Isn't widow just a horrible title?" And I'm like, "Yes, I hate it. It's just an awful title." And so that session finished, and they asked if I was okay, and I said, I just know I've experienced the worst hell I could ever imagine.
Yeah.
And in that instant, it just washed through me so strong. I said, No, it'll be when you lose a child." And I was just like, "Oh, that's not real. It's just anxiety.
Oh,
Like, it's just because of your fear." And I kept trying to talk myself down, but it was undeniable. It was undeniable. And sadly, my son passed 2 months later. So
oh my goodness.
God is always speaking to us if we're listening.
Yes, I agree. Absolutely agree.
Yeah.
I have two more questions for you. One is, where do you think that heaven or the other side is? Again, do you think that that's just another dimension, frequency, or do you think it's here with us?
Yeah, I really love the as above, so below, the micro and
Me
the
too.
macro. Everything exists
Yeah.
simultaneously. Uh, I I feel like it's a frequency thing. There's
Mhm.
quantum physics has proven that
Yeah.
everything is the eternal now, and
Mhm.
we are able to see the spirit realm and connect with those and the loved ones. I know for a fact they're with us now. I'm sure my husband and
Mhm.
son are watching. My dad, they're just like,
Yeah.
yeah, share your
I
story. We're
I've
here.
got that with my mom as well.
Yeah,
I've had many feelings from her so far, and it's only been a couple weeks.
yeah.
My next question is, everyone who comes back returns with a truth. So, Vicky, what truth did you return with? And one you feel humanity most needs to hear right now?
On a conscious level, nobody would choose the challenges that they have. I certainly would not. On a conscious level, I would not sit here saying, geez, I would like to go through all of the unimaginable. But on a spiritual level, and the potential for growth and deeper understanding, deeper compassion, deeper love, I can't imagine a greater teaching ground. And so, will I ever be grateful that I went through this? No, probably not. But
Yeah.
will I be grateful for what I've learned through it? Will I be grateful for watching and witnessing the love that others have given to me? Will I be grateful for the miracles that I got to witness? Will I be
Yeah.
grateful for the insight and compassion that I've developed? Yeah, yeah. My dear friend once told me, once you lose somebody, you're entering a club that nobody wants to be in. But when you enter that club, there better be somebody at the door. And I'm going to be at that door. I'm going to
Oh,
be at that door.
that's beautiful. That's beautiful. For those who feel called to learn more about you and your work, can you share about your offerings, your services, or your works and your public works, I should say,
Yeah, yeah. So,
and
uh,
where people can find you, obviously. Sorry
yeah,
about that.
fantastic. Behind me, I have a copy of my book, The Secret to Healing and Recovery. I wrote that book speaking to those who are on the healing journey, and I. I I share more in depth about my near death experience and the wisdom that I learned through that.
Mhm.
And then I have chapters of everything about rebuilding the body and specific tools for various healing modalities. So it applies to, I think everybody who's writing a book will speak directly to a specific audience. My audience would be those who just don't feel well and don't understand why, and understanding how stress affects the body and how our brain gets dysregulated and how the body stores emotions, and all of these things, but I put a number of tools in there because, like we began this session, there is amazing technology out there, and there's amazing practitioners and various tools that are fantastic to support a healing journey. But ultimately, the purpose of my book is that you become the driver of your own life once again, that you're not relinquishing. 20 years ago, if you went to a medical doctor, there was a hierarchy. It was God,
Hmm.
doctors, and then you. And so
Right.
it was, and the God and doctor thing, that kind of was overlapped a little bit because they had the God complex. Now we have Dr. Google, we have Dr. AI, and we can diagnose ourselves better. So
You
people,
actually can.
yeah, and people are doing their own work. And so my
Well,
book is here to help support using the tools. And so I don't give any tools in there that you need another individual to help you with. It would be supportive, like an EFT. I go with the steps of how to do a basic recipe and do tapping. It's great to work with a
mm,
practitioner when you want to do some deeper work, for sure, especially if you have some trauma or, PTSD. It would be very supportive to work with a practitioner. I still work with my friend. It's been very supportive for me. So, every massage therapist should have another massage therapist that works on them, and every practitioner should have another practitioner. But I also have a chapter that it's a caregiver's guide for those who have a loved one who is in a chronic or a terminal illness, and the heavy burden that they carry with that, and the
hmm
do's and don'ts. And so that's the nature of my book. It's available on Amazon, and it's also on Audible. Again, it's
mm.
The Secret to Healing and Recovery. And my website is vickiwerner.com. And so I'm sure you'll share that in the
Yes, I
link.
will.
And
Yeah.
um, and then, like I mentioned, I do past life regressions. I studied directly with Dolores Cannon and with 2HHT in 2006.
Wow.
And so her sessions, those type of sessions, need to be in person. But I do other versions of past life regressions through Zoom, and then again tapping sessions with my clients as well. So I usually like to do both.
That sounds very interesting.
Yeah.
I
Thank you.
haven't had a past life regression before. I really want to have one.
Oh, let's
And I
make it
love
happen.
Dolores Cannon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, I
She's
just,
fascinating. Yeah.
oh
Fascinating.
my goodness. Yeah, I think I've read all of her books.
Yeah. She was
Absolutely.
amazing. She was amazing. And it was a beautiful blessing to be able to work directly with her, for sure.
Yes, very fortunate.
Yeah.
Vicki, I can't say thank you enough.
Thank you.
I really can't. And not only do I want to say thank you, but I'm grateful for you sharing something that is so tender, so new still, and so sacred.
Yeah.
Your story speaks not just for survival, but to love, and love that anchors us here, love that reaches beyond the veil, and love that reminds us why we stay.
Yeah. Thank you.
So thank you for bringing your truth, your courage, and your light to the returned.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure visiting with you today.
You're so welcome. And to everyone listening, may this story remind you that even in the deepest exhaustion, even when the body feels like it can't go on, the soul is still being guided. Sometimes we are shown what matters the most, not to frighten us, but to call us back to love. And until next time, stay open, stay curious, and keep returning to the truth within you.